The aroma of roasted coffee beans and warm pastries usually comforted me, a familiar scent tied to countless Saturday mornings and quiet weekday afternoons spent in this particular cafe. The daily grind wasn't pretentious, just comfortable, worn leather chairs, soft lighting, the low murmur of conversations blending with the hiss of the espresso machine. I'd chosen it deliberately for our meeting, hoping the familiar surroundings might somehow ease the tension that had been steadily building between Sophia and me for months. A tension I couldn't quite name, but felt deep in my bones, like a coming storm. I checked my watch again. 2:15 p.m. She was late, which wasn't unusual lately, but it added another small weight to the anxiety already settling in my chest. We needed to talk, really talk, about the silences that stretched too long, the way her smiles didn't quite reach her eyes anymore, the vague explanations for late nights that felt increasingly thin. I stirred my cooling coffee, the spoon clinking softly against the ceramic, the sound loud in the bubble of my own thoughts. I loved Sophia, had loved her for 15 years, built a life with her brick by careful brick. But the foundation felt shaky, and I didn't know why. That's when I saw her. My breath caught. She pushed through the glass door, a gust of cool autumn air following her in. Sunlight caught the auburn highlights in her hair, the hair I loved to run my fingers through. But my relief at seeing her evaporated instantly, replaced by a cold, sharp jolt. She wasn't alone. Walking beside her, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, in a gesture far too familiar, far too intimate, was a man I didn't recognize. He leaned down, saying something close to her ear, and Sophia tilted her head back, laughing. It wasn't her polite social laugh, it was the genuine, uninhibited laugh I hadn't heard directed at me in what felt like an eternity. The sound, usually music to my ears, now felt like shattering glass. They didn't see me. My table was tucked in a slightly shadowed corner, partially obscured by a large potted fern. I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. The world seemed to narrow, the background chatter fading into an indistinct hum. My heart started a heavy, painful thudding against my ribs. It was like watching a scene from someone else's life, a badly written play, except the woman playing the lead role was my wife. Sophia scanned the room, her eyes skimming past my corner without registering my presence. The man beside her guided her toward a table near the window, pulling out her chair with an easy confidence that spoke of routine. He sat opposite her, leaning forward, his gaze entirely focused on her. Her posture mirrored his, open, engaged, a vibrancy in her expression I hadn't seen in so long. They looked comfortable, connected. My mind scrambled, desperately trying to find an innocent explanation, a colleague, an old friend. But the way he looked at her, the way her hand briefly touched his arm as she spoke, the shared smile that lingered between them, it screamed something else, something I had refused to let myself consider, pushing the nagging doubts away, because the alternative was unthinkable. He reached across the table, his fingers brushing hers as he picked up a sugar packet. It was a small gesture, almost insignificant, but it landed like a physical blow. My stomach twisted. I watched them order, their heads close together as they looked at the menu, the picture of easy intimacy. She ordered her usual latte, the one with oat milk and a sprinkle of cinnamon. He seemed to know it already, nodding along as she spoke to the waitress. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. This wasn't a chance encounter. This wasn't a business meeting. This was something else. The carefully constructed reality I had inhabited for 15 years began to crack, fissures spreading outward from that single devastating image. Sophia, my Sophia, sitting bathed in the afternoon sun, laughing with another man, her hand casually touching his. The life I thought we were living, the future I assumed we were building. Did any of it exist outside my own mind? I remained hidden behind the fern, a silent observer of my own life's demolition. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe properly. Every shared glance, every laugh, every casual touch between them hammered another nail into the coffin of what I thought we had. He said something, and she playfully swatted his arm, her smile radiant, unguarded. A smile I missed more than I could articulate. Seeing it now, directed at him, felt like a profound betrayal, deeper and sharper than I could have ever imagined. I needed to leave, to run, to escape this suffocating tableau. But my feet felt bolted to the floor, my gaze locked on the scene unfolding just yards away, the picture of my shattered world. I watched them for what felt like an hour, though the clock on the wall told me only 10 minutes had passed. Each second stretched, filled with the excruciating clarity of my new reality. He leaned back in his chair, folding his arms, a posture of relaxed ownership as he listened to Sophia speak. She was animated, gesturing with her hands, her face alight with enthusiasm. What was she telling him? Was she sharing the dreams we once whispered to each other in the dark? Was she complaining about me, painting me as the reason for her seeking solace elsewhere? The thought sent a fresh wave of bitterness through me. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text message. I fumbled for it, my fingers clumsy, almost dropping it. It was Sophia, running late, stuck in traffic. Be there soon. The lie was so blatant, so casual, delivered while she sat less than 30 feet away, gazing into another man's eyes. Traffic. The absurdity of it was almost comical, if it weren't gutting me from the inside out. I stared at the screen, the words blurring slightly. She hadn't even bothered with a more creative excuse. Did she think I was that blind, that stupid, or did she simply not care anymore? The waitress returned with their drinks. Sophia beamed at her, then took a sip of her latte, her eyes closing for a brief moment in apparent pleasure. The man watched her, a soft smile playing on his lips. It was the kind of intimate, unguarded moment couples share, a silent acknowledgement of shared enjoyment. It felt like peering through a window into a life I was never meant to see, a life Sophia was living parallel to ours. My own coffee sat untouched, cold and forgotten. The pastry I'd ordered looked suddenly repulsive. My appetite had vanished, replaced by a hollow ache deep in my stomach. I wanted to stand up, to walk over there, to shatter their cozy bubble. I pictured myself confronting them, the imagined words tumbling out in a torrent of hurt and anger. Who is this, Sophia? What is going on? But what good would it do? Her text message proved she was already deep in deception. A confrontation here, in this public space, felt messy, degrading. Would she lie more? Would she turn on me? Defend him? The thought of causing a scene, of revealing my raw pain to strangers, and, worse, to her indifferent gaze, held me captive. There was a part of me, too, that was terrified of hearing the truth confirmed, of having the last vestiges of hope extinguished. He reached out again, this time placing his hand over hers on the table. It wasn't a fleeting touch. It lingered. Sophia didn't pull away. She let his hand rest there, her gaze meeting his. In that moment, the ambiguity vanished. There was no innocent explanation left. My wife, the woman I shared my bed, my life, my deepest vulnerabilities with, was intimately involved with another man. A profound sense of loneliness washed over me, colder and more isolating than the autumn air outside. 15 years. Had it all been a prelude to this? Were there other moments, other men? My mind raced backwards, stumbling over memories, reinterpreting past events through this new, agonizing lens. Late nights, excused as work deadlines. Weekend conferences she insisted on attending alone. The growing emotional distance I had attributed to stress or the natural erosion of time. Had I been willfully blind? Had the signs been there all along, waiting for me to acknowledge them? The pain was physical now, a tight band constricting my chest, making it hard to draw a full breath. My hands were trembling, not violently, but with a fine, persistent tremor. I needed to get out. Staying here, watching them, was a form of self-torture I couldn't endure any longer. Slowly, carefully, I pushed my chair back. The scraping sound seemed deafening in my ears, but neither Sophia nor her companion looked up. They were absorbed in their own world, a world that clearly didn't include me. I stood on unsteady legs, feeling strangely lightheaded. I fumbled in my wallet, pulling out a bill and dropping it on the table, more than enough to cover my untouched order. Walking towards the exit felt like wading through thick mud. I kept my gaze fixed on the door, forcing myself not to look back at their table. But as my hand touched the cool metal of the door handle, I couldn't resist. I risked one final glance. He was leaning in, whispering something to her again. Her head was tilted, her expression soft, intimate. They were oblivious, lost in each other. The image burned itself into my memory, a snapshot of the moment my marriage ended, even if Sophia didn't know it yet. Outside, the air was sharp and cool against my flushed face. The sounds of the city, car horns, distant sirens, chatter from passers-by rushed back in, jarring after the muffled quiet of the cafe and the louder silence of my own shock. I walked quickly, almost blindly, towards my car parked down the street. My keys felt foreign in my hand as I fumbled with the lock. Sliding into the driver's seat, I rested my forehead against the steering wheel. The car felt like an alien pod, disconnected from the normal flow of life happening outside. The carefully controlled numbness I'd maintained inside the cafe began to crumble, replaced by waves of raw emotion. Anger, hot and sharp, surged through me. How could she? How could she sit there, laughing, texting me lies, while she held hands with another man? Then came the grief, vast and overwhelming. It wasn't just the betrayal of the present moment, it was the poisoning of the past. Our shared history, the memories I cherished, our wedding day, the birth of our children, thankfully grown and out of the house now, spared this immediate fallout. Quiet evenings spent dreaming of the future, all felt tainted, rewritten by this devastating revelation. Was any of it real? Tears welled, hot and stinging, blurring my vision. I choked back a sob, pounding a fist against the steering wheel, a muffled thud that did nothing to release the pressure building inside me. The betrayal felt like a physical wound, deep and bleeding. The woman I trusted implicitly, the bedrock of my life, had shattered that trust into a million irreparable pieces. I started the engine, the familiar rumble doing little to ground me. I drove without direction, navigating the city streets on autopilot, my mind a chaotic whirl of pain, questions, and shattered images of Sophia's smiling face turned toward someone else. Where did I go from here? What did I do now? The path forward was completely obscured, lost in the fog of shock and heartbreak. Eventually, I found myself parked by the river, the late afternoon sun glinting off the water. The city skyline stood silhouetted against the deepening blue, usually a sight I found calming, but today it just looked distant and indifferent. I turned off the engine and sat in the heavy silence, the weight of what I'd seen pressing down on me. The cafe scene replayed in my mind relentlessly, her laugh, his hand on her back, their shared glances, her lying text. Each detail was a fresh stab of pain. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't something we could talk through, fix with therapy, or mend with apologies. This was a fundamental breach, a seismic shift that had altered the landscape of my life forever. I didn't know what the future held. Confrontation seemed inevitable, but the thought filled me with dread. Would she continue to lie? Would she express remorse? Or would she confirm my worst fears, that this had been going on for a long time, that our marriage was merely a facade she maintained for reasons I couldn't fathom? Sitting there, watching the river flow silently onward, I felt an immense weariness settle over me. The fight hadn't even begun, but I already felt exhausted. The trust was gone. The image of her with him was seared into my brain. Whatever happened next, whatever path we took, the truth remained stark and unavoidable. The life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, was over. It died in that sunlit cafe, behind a potted fern, to the sound of my wife laughing with another man. The road ahead stretched out, unknown and daunting, and for the first time in 15 years, I realized I would have to walk it alone. The knowledge didn't bring anger, not yet. It brought only a profound, echoing emptiness. The river offered no answers, only the steady, indifferent movement of water carving its path through the landscape. It flowed on, uncaring of the wreckage accumulating on its banks, the wreckage of my life. How long had I been sitting here? An hour? 2? The sun had dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and bruised purple, colors that felt mockingly beautiful against the ugliness churning inside me. My mind kept replaying the scene in the cafe, an endless loop of betrayal. Sophia's laugh, his hand on hers, the easy intimacy that felt like a physical blow, and the text message, stuck in traffic. The casual cruelty of it was staggering. It implied a level of disregard, a confidence in my ignorance that hurt almost as much as the infidelity itself. Who was he? Did he know about me? Did they laugh about me? The questions were venomous, coiling in my gut. I pictured them leaving the cafe, walking arm in arm, perhaps going back to his place, or worse, a hotel. The images were vivid, unwanted, yet impossible to banish. Each imagined scenario sent shards of ice through my veins. Eventually, the cold started to seep into the car, mirroring the chill that had taken root in my heart. Staying here wasn't helping. I needed to go home. Home! The word itself felt strange now, hollowed out. What was home? Was it the physical space, the house we'd painstakingly renovated, filled with furniture we'd chosen together, walls holding echoes of laughter and whispered secrets? Or was it the shared life, the trust, the partnership? If it was the latter, then home no longer existed. The drive back was mechanical, I navigated familiar streets that suddenly felt alien. Every corner store, every park bench seemed imbued with a memory now tainted. That deli, where we always grabbed sandwiches for picnics. The cinema, where we had our third date. The small park where I'd proposed. Each landmark was a reminder of a shared narrative that felt like fiction now. Pulling into the driveway, I saw her car wasn't there. A small, sharp pang of, what? Relief? Disappointment? I wasn't sure. It just meant the inevitable confrontation was delayed, leaving me more time adrift in this sea of uncertainty. The house was quiet, filled with the specific silence that falls when you're expecting someone. I walked through the rooms, each step echoing slightly on the hardwood floors. Our wedding photo on the mantelpiece seemed to mock me. Two smiling faces, full of hope and oblivious to the fault lines already forming beneath the surface. I reached out, my fingers tracing the curve of Sophia's cheek on the cool glass, then pulled my hand back as if burned. I couldn't stay still. I paced the living room, then the kitchen, my mind a whirlwind. Should I pack a bag? Should I leave before she got back? Or should I stay, face her, demand answers I wasn't sure I wanted to hear? Every option felt wrong, inadequate. Leaving felt like cowardice, like letting her off the hook. Staying felt like prolonging the agony, like subjecting myself to more lies, more pain. I ended up in my study, sinking into the worn leather chair behind my desk. This was my space, filled with my books, my projects, the scent of old paper and wood polish. Usually, it was a sanctuary. Tonight, it felt like a bunker, a place to hide from the incoming shelling. I stared unseeingly at the rows of books, the titles blurring together. Time crawled. Each tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway seemed unnaturally loud, marking the slow passage towards something, towards her return, towards the moment the silence would have to break. My phone remained silent. No follow-up text, no call explaining her continued delay. She was still with him, presumably. The thought was a constant, dull ache. What would she be like when she walked in? Would she be flustered, offering a rushed apology for being so late? Would she be coolly detached, retreating into the polite distance that had become her norm? Or would she sense the shift in the atmosphere, the heavy weight of my discovery hanging in the air? My hands clenched and unclenched. I thought about the man in the cafe, his confident air, the way he touched her. Was he wealthy? Successful? Did he offer her something I couldn't? Excitement? Escape? The self-doubt, insidious and unwelcome, began to creep in. Had I become complacent? Boring? Had I failed her somehow, driven her into the arms of another? I tried to push the thoughts away. This wasn't my fault. Her choices were her own. But the questions lingered, adding another layer to the suffocating pain. Finally, headlights swept across the living room window. My heart leaped into my throat, pounding erratically. Car door opened, then closed. Footsteps on the gravel path, keys jangling at the lock. The sound was so ordinary, yet tonight it felt laden with dread. The front door opened, and Sophia stepped inside. "Hello?" she called out, her voice carrying a note of forced brightness. "Sorry I'm so late. The traffic was absolutely insane. Then I got held up with a client call that went forever." She walked into the living room, tossing her keys onto the small table by the door, shrugging off her coat. She didn't look flustered or apologetic. She looked normal, too normal, as if this were just any other evening. She glanced towards the study doorway where I stood, partially silhouetted. "There you are," she said, offering a quick, distracted smile. "Sitting in the dark? Everything okay?" I didn't move. I couldn't summon the words. My throat felt tight, constricted. All the rehearsed speeches, the angry accusations, the heartbroken questions, they all evaporated, leaving only a heavy, watchful silence. Her smile faltered slightly. She tilted her head, studying me. "Paul? What is it? You look—" She trailed off, a flicker of unease finally entering her eyes. Perhaps it was the way I was standing, rigid and unmoving. Perhaps it was the expression on my face, which must have mirrored the devastation I felt inside. She took a tentative step towards me. "Did something happen?" she asked, her voice softer now, laced with a careful sort of concern that felt utterly false. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. The image of her hand in his, her radiant smile directed at him, flashed in my mind. The lie about traffic echoed in the silence. The betrayal sat between us, a tangible entity, thick and suffocating. She stopped a few feet away, her gaze searching mine, the manufactured calm beginning to fray around the edges. The air crackled with unspoken words, with the immense weight of what I knew, and what she didn't yet realize I knew. Everything had changed. She stood there, expecting the familiar rhythm of our evening routine, oblivious to the fact that the ground had irrevocably shifted beneath our feet. The silence stretched, heavy and profound, marking not an end, but the terrifying beginning of an unknown, fractured future. I saw the dawning awareness in her eyes, the first shadow of fear, but still I said nothing. The weight of the truth was mine to carry, at least for this moment, a silent, heavy burden in the ruins of our life. Sophia's forced smile vanished completely, replaced by a mask of cautious apprehension. She searched my face, her eyes wide now. The casual act dropped. The silence stretched, thick and brittle, amplifying the frantic pounding in my own ears. I could see the wheels turning in her head, trying to decipher my stillness, my refusal to engage in the usual nightly pleasantries. "Paul, you're scaring me," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She wrapped her arms around herself, a defensive gesture I hadn't seen in years. "What happened? Tell me." My gaze drifted past her, towards the window overlooking the dark street. The street she'd driven down minutes ago, after leaving him, after leaving the cafe where they sat so comfortably together. "Traffic was bad?" I asked, my voice raspy, unfamiliar even to myself. It wasn't the furious outburst I'd imagined, nor the tearful plea. It was flat, devoid of inflection, heavy with the weight of the lie it represented. Sophia blinked, thrown off balance. "What?" "Yes, it was awful. Bumper to bumper on the crosstown." She started to elaborate, the practiced excuse flowing automatically, but faltered as she met my unwavering gaze. Something in my eyes must have told her that I knew. The color drained from her face, leaving her skin pale and translucent under the hallway light. Why are you asking about traffic?" she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. "Just wondering," I continued, my voice still unnervingly calm, though a storm raged inside me. "Wondering how long you were stuck. Wondering if you had time for coffee, perhaps." Her breath hitched. Her eyes darted around the room, anywhere but at me. Denial flickered across her features, quickly followed by panic. "Coffee? What are you talking about?" "The daily grind," I said, naming the cafe, letting the words hang in the air like poisoned darts. Around 2:15? Did the traffic clear up by then? Sophia physically recoiled, taking a step back as if I had struck her. Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with disbelief and dawning horror. The carefully constructed facade shattered, leaving behind raw, undisguised guilt. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, no words forming, no lies readily available to cover this direct hit. You were there?" she whispered, the question barely audible, heavy with the admission it contained. I didn't answer her question directly. I didn't need to. My silence, my steady gaze confirmed it. I watched as the implications washed over her, the lie exposed, the betrayal witnessed firsthand. The easy confidence she'd worn earlier in the day evaporated, leaving her looking small, fragile. "Paul, she began, her voice cracking, tears welling in her eyes. It's not what it looks like." The classic line, the desperate final attempt to deflect, to minimize. A bitter laugh escaped me then, short and harsh. "Isn't it, Sophia? What does it look like? Tell me." Because from where I was sitting, it looked like my wife was enjoying an intimate coffee date with another man, holding his hand, laughing at his jokes, while texting me lies about being stuck in traffic. Each word was deliberate, heavy, delivered with the cold finality of a judge passing sentence. Her face crumpled, tears spilling freely now, tracking paths through her makeup. She shook her head, mumbling incoherent fragments. "Please, let me explain." But the time for explanations felt long past. The image of her in the cafe was indelible. The trust, once the bedrock of our 15 years together, had been pulverized. Seeing her break down now didn't evoke pity, only a profound sense of emptiness. The woman standing before me felt like a stranger, someone who had worn the mask of my wife while living a secret life. "There's nothing to explain," I said, the weariness settling deep in my bones. My voice was quiet, resigned. I saw what I saw. I turned away from her then, walking back into the study, the conversation unfinished, but the conclusion already reached in my heart. I couldn't look at her anymore, couldn't bear witness to the crumbling of the person I thought I knew. The house felt suffocatingly silent again, despite the sound of her quiet, desperate sobs trailing behind me. The future was a blank, terrifying canvas, but standing there, amidst the ruins of my marriage, one thing felt undeniably clear. Whatever path lay ahead, it wouldn't include her. The betrayal wasn't just an act, it was a revelation of who she was, and it had severed the ties that bound us irrevocably. The pain was immense, a gaping wound, but beneath it, a flicker of something else began to emerge. The cold, hard certainty of an ending, and the daunting, solitary prospect of a new beginning. I closed the study door gently, the click of the latch echoing in the sudden quiet. Her muffled sobs were still audible from the living room, a soundtrack to the demolition of our life. I didn't feel anger anymore, just a vast, hollow emptiness. The storm had broken, leaving behind a desolate landscape. I walked over to the window, pushing aside the heavy curtain. Outside, the streetlights cast long, lonely shadows on the empty road. A car passed, its headlights momentarily illuminating the room, then plunging it back into near darkness. The world kept moving, oblivious. There were no more questions about why she did it, why him, why now. The reasons felt irrelevant. The fact was the betrayal itself, stark and undeniable. It was a chasm that no explanation, no apology, no amount of tears could bridge. 15 years of shared history, trust built layer by painstaking layer, shattered in a single afternoon. It couldn't be unseen, unknown. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass. The reflection staring back was a stranger, haggard, eyes filled with a pain I didn't recognize. The life I had meticulously built, the future I had envisioned, had dissolved like smoke. What remained was this aching void, this crushing silence in a house that suddenly felt too large, too empty. Her sobbing eventually subsided, replaced by an unnerving quiet. I didn't know what she was doing out there, and a part of me didn't care. The emotional connection had been severed. She was on one side of an uncrossable divide, and I was on the other, alone. The path forward was shrouded in fog. Practicalities would intrude eventually. Lawyers, dividing assets, telling the children. The thought was exhausting. But for now, there was only this moment, this profound sense of loss, this chilling certainty that everything had changed. The marriage was over. The life we knew was gone, and I was left standing in the wreckage, facing an unknown future with nothing but the weight of this ending as my companion. The night stretched before me, long and silent, offering no comfort, only the stark reality of my solitude.